I take on quite a bit of risk. My risk tolerance has always been. It's funny because like whether you have $10 or you have $10 billion, if you risk all of it.
Wow, and that sticks with you.
Yeah, because like it had to be done.
But talk to me about in the moment, what the obsession was like and how obsessed you were about it.
Just giving somebody everything isn't going to give them passion or purpose, right? And the reality is, to be successful in anything, you have to. And I think that's how people think. That
when you're taking those risks, have you just taken so many that fear doesn't affect you in that decision making anymore? Or is
so I really pride myself on always doing something, always moving something, always like progressing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to take a quick break from our show to say a massive thank you and a big shout out to one of our amazing sponsors, Dave DiStefano. Dave is a mortgage broker with over 13 years in the business, and Dave has a great rapport with a network of lenders, including big banks, credit unions, trust companies, financial institutions, and private funds. He will work on your behalf to help you find the best mortgage with the most agreeable terms and the lowest interest rate. After meeting Dave many times and having great discussions with him, he provides a level of confidence and comfort in knowing that he is going to take care of you. If you want to reach out to Dave, you can find his office on 6293 Thoroldstone Road in Niagara Falls. For more information or to make an appointment for any of your mortgage needs, call 905-933-1090. That's 905-933-1090. And thanks for listening. Back to the show.
What's going on, Meeting Gold listeners? It's Chris Battaglia, 416 Coffee. Use the coupon code Meeting Gold to get 10% off your first order at 416 Coffee. Enjoy the show.
There you go. All right, guys, what's going on? My name's Sammy Milley. Welcome back to the Meeting Gold Show. We're going to jump right into it. We've got Evan MacDonald. Evan, I don't even know how to properly introduce you because you do so many things. What would be like a good title, I guess? Owner of 6 companies?
Yeah, I don't know. Just...
creative artist. That's what I'll say.
A glutton for punishment.
So, guys, if you're wondering why you should listen to this podcast today, I don't know what we're going to call it yet, but Evan's a really seasoned investor. He knows how money works. He knows how business works. But on top of that, he's a very intellectual thinker. And we kind of we're touching on that a little bit, nature versus nurture and the mindset around that. Evan, how would you kind of describe your thought process around certain things? Take me through that. Like how does Evan MacDonald dissect decisions and really make wise decisions?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I don't know if I make too many wise decisions. I look at all the issues I find myself in. So I think I make a lot of poor decisions, and then I'm a good problem solver. Maybe that would be the best way to describe myself.
Looking at it, yeah.
But I take on quite a bit of risk. My risk tolerance has always been fairly high, and I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is that I'll take bigger calculated risks and then find a way to solve the problems so that it works out.
When you're taking those risks, have you just taken so many that fear doesn't affect you in that decision making anymore, or is fear still a big factor in that? And is it a benefit?
No, it's funny because I was watching this show on Elon Musk the other day, just happened to be watching it, and it was that launch where he was on like the 4th Falcon launch, and it was like that was it. Like he was out of money. Like he had already done PayPal, he had already done Tesla, and he just he's got this passion to get to space, and like you can see him like pacing in the room, and he's like swearing, and like you can tell like he's in rough shape. Like he hasn't slept, and like this is it. Like he loses everything at the end of this launch. And I'm not Elon Musk, not even close, and I wouldn't even dare to compare myself to him. But that feeling is the same, right? So when you take a risk and you risk all of it, like whether you have $10 or you have $10 billion, if you risk all of it and you're broke afterwards, like the feeling of like winning and losing is the same, right? And so it's like this adrenaline rush, I guess you could say, but like there's this like, I remember when we would do like a project and it was like, okay, like we're all in on this, like, got $100,000 to my name, and like I'm 100% all in. This is going to work out. We're going to hit these numbers. We're going to hit this date. We're going to get these tenants at this price, and it's all going to work out. And if it doesn't, well, then we just lose everything, right? And so like you put yourself in this position where it's like, okay, well, I've set a goal, and I've pigeonholed myself where like it's that goal or lose it all, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say your fears may be disguised by the conscious decision to know that you chase that adrenaline rush more than the win or the loss. Is that accurate? Like the adrenaline rush for you is what makes you want to continue to do it?
I don't know. It's tough. Like, so like obviously we have like when I competed at a high level in wrestling, and like there was this like, you know, you kill yourself for years to attain a certain goal, and the very second that you attain it, like it feels good for like maximum 24 hours, and then you're on to the next goal, right? And I think that it's the same in business, where like as you grow or you accomplish something, you set goals, like it's a struggle to get there, and some of these projects take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and like it's a constant struggle and a constant battle to make it work. And the very second that you accomplish it, it feels amazing. And then within 24 hours, like it's over, and it's time to like go on to the next thing. Interesting.
So with that being said, transferring over, 24 hours, it's gone. I guess you could say that dopamine feeling of the success is gone. Do you find yourself constantly chasing that, or are you disappointed after the fact? Like, is there a disappointment factor in after those 24 hours, or why doesn't it feel so good? Like, do you find yourself struggling with those decisions?
No, I don't. I've never really overthought that to that extent. Like, it's just that's human nature, and so you've got to find like your purpose as well, where it's like you got to find the spot in life where that you have value and you have joy, and of course there's going to be ups and downs and struggles, but like that's where like you look at other people and you're like, they've got it made. Right. Like when you look at other people and you're like, wow, like they got it made. Like you look at movie stars, you look at like the people that people like look up to and dream to be. It's like, do they really have it made? Like, are they happy in what they're doing? Yeah. Does that bring them joy? Is there enough struggle that the joy is worth it? Right. Like it's without struggle, like it's like we bought a place in Florida fairly recently, and we go a lot. And I wonder to myself, like, I love it there so much. But like, if I live there all the time, would I love it that much, or do I only love it so much because Canadian winters are so terrible?
So you're balancing out you're very aware about if you don't have so much of it, then you appreciate it while it's there for the short time.
Well, yeah, like it's, and this is like obviously something that no one really knows the answer. Of course, like do you only take joy in things that feel so good because you've had things happen that felt so bad, and the differential is happiness, right? Is that what it is? I don't know. Or is it just that good things feel good, and you could just do them indefinitely and be happy with it?
I found I'm going to relate this back to you, but back when I was in high school, which I apparently, people joke, oh, that was 6 months ago. I set a goal that I wanted to make X amount in 1 month. Yeah. And that was the only goal that I set. And I worked my ass off just for that one thing. And everything else got sacrificed because of it. I hit that goal. And like you said, the unfulfillment came after hitting that goal, that I was almost left starstruck, like, what do I do now? And trying to find a new purpose. Yeah. Was there a moment, you were an Olympian and you wrestled for Team Canada. Was there a moment after accomplishing that goal that you thought, what am I going to do next? A moment of doubt?
Well, no, like, cause I qualified for the Olympics, and then like instantly the goal was to win the Olympics. Right. And then I didn't win the Olympics, and then the goal was, okay, well, I got to go back and win. Right. And I never did win. And I know people who have won the Olympics that like have the identical struggle because they want to win the Olympics twice, right? And then they never do that, right?
Right.
And so it's extremely rare for anybody in anything to ever accomplish their final goal, right? Which is super interesting because if you study any successful person in history, they almost never succeed for their final goal, right? So like, where is the true joy in any of it, right? Like, because you have to find joy in the process. Is kind of been my like reflection on all of it. Like, if you can't find joy in the process, you messed up,
Right.
because the result is not where the joy is, right? The joy is is actually like in the process. There's a spike where there's this peak of happiness and celebration for the accomplishment, but like the journey has to be the destination, right? And that's where, so like I look back on my wrestling career and in a way, like I was really, really fortunate because I woke up every single day with the goal of being the best in the world at something. And I killed myself for it. And to the point that like, it's just funny because like I was broke, lived very like modestly. Like I lived at like the cheapest place that I could find to live in was literally across the street from the fire hall in St. Catharines.
Really?
Right? Like it's the cheapest place in town because they blast their horns all night with the fire trucks. Like there's a reason why it's cheap. So like I had to sleep with earplugs just to like make ends meet.
Right.
But I didn't even know that I was broke. It didn't even like there wasn't like during that period, it was like over a decade where I woke up every single day, one goal, one purpose, be the best in the world at this sport. And like the fact that I had to sleep with earplugs to survive, like with the cheapest rent, it never occurred to me until I was done.
So talk to me about the obsession that you had for it, because really one of the biggest YouTubers in the world who's doing tens of millions of dollars every single month says you need to obsess over whatever it is that you want to achieve in order to achieve it. Mm-hmm. What was your obsession like with the in the moment? Talk to me in the moment. This is mature Evan. This is Evan who has learned from years and years of development mistakes and investment mistakes and all this. But talk to me about in the moment, Evan, what the obsession was like and how obsessed you were about it.
Well, I guess I kind of touched on it. I was so obsessed about that one goal that nothing else mattered. Right? Like it was like I was always late on my rent. I I would fill up my gas tank on like, okay, I've got, $12 in my bank account. Like I'll put in 10 and get a coffee. You know what I mean? And like then I got to wrestling practice. Right? And like and I literally was top 10 in the world. Right? Like but that didn't even matter and didn't even affect me or didn't even like come into my mind as like a problem.
So would you say you sacrificed your I guess you could say how well-being, your comfort level of well-being financially to achieve this goal?
Oh yeah, completely. I did just barely enough to survive financially so I could spend every ounce of energy on that sport. And it was, I was training 6 to 8 hours every day, 3 training sessions, like killing myself in the gym, going hard cardio, and then like really, really hard on the mat training, like always 100%. There was never like a time when I wasn't like full throttle.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you a pretty challenging thought, because a lot of people say that it's with what you're born is that's what you're set up. I was born into a wealthy family, so I'm set up for life. For you, I don't know the financial well-being of where you were at, back when you were a kid. But would you say that when people are saying, you're set up for this, you're set up for that, how much of your own reality do you believe you control versus what maybe some other people say is you don't really control much of it, and luck is the number one thing that controls where you're destined to, I guess, be?
Yeah. Okay, so we touched on this earlier just in conversation briefly, right? So like that's basically the old like argument of nature versus nurture. Like they made lots of plays about it. Pygmalion, Trading Places was the one in like 1980 something with Eddie Murphy. Great movie. You'll have to watch it. Obviously it's older than you are. But it's it's this concept that you like. The movie and the play is there's these two rich guys that basically make these bets on people, and like if they could take this homeless person and give him everything, give him money, give him opportunity, will he be successful? And you take a successful person, take their money away, take away their opportunity, put them in the streets, will they be successful again? Right? And so like the movie and the play are like both have like they're fun, and like and then it gets you thinking though, like, doesn't matter, right? So if you're born into a wealthy family, can you be a total disaster? Of course, we see it all the time, right? People that win the lottery, 99% of the time, they're broke within a year, right? So like just giving somebody everything isn't going to give them passion or purpose, right? And the reality is, to be successful in anything, you have to have passion, and there has to be a purpose. Like like nobody I've ever met who's successful in any avenue like isn't like their face doesn't light up when you talk to them about it. Right. And so you're not born into that. Like that's one argument that for sure is not up for debate, but there's another one that is. Like you look at, like Usain Bolt, right? Like that guy was born with some gifts. Like no amount of passion, no amount of grit and desire. And like I could go and train 23 hours a day.
Yeah,
and I will. This little white guy frame is not competing with Usain Bolt. It's not happening, right? And it's never happened. There's never been a guy with this body who's gone and pulled off that stunt, right? It's not happening. You need to be you need to have like that genetic code to be competitive. So for those guys, it's like you're going to fit into this genetic anomaly, and then now it comes down to passion, purpose, grit. So like the guys who are winning at that top level, sure, like one of them they're all like outworking each other, and they're all out there fighting for it, and there's passion, but like you don't even get to compete without being born into that competition.
So would you say there is or there isn't genetic influence on your financial state? Because there's a lot of people who are broke right now listening to this podcast saying, oh, well, this happened to me. Like, okay, here's an example that comes immediately to my head. I just got through a divorce and now I have nothing.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah. Well, if someone said they, just got in a divorce and have nothing, just had a divorce and have nothing, I'd just ask them, like, what did you have before the divorce? Right? Mm-hmm. Something. Right. So why can't you do that again? Right? Like there's a lot of excuses out there for being broke, and most of them are that you're just lazy. Like we live in literally one of the greatest places to live in the world. Like just being born here, you're in like the top 5% of all humans that have ever lived through all of history. Right? Like we're going back, like kings and queens from 200 years ago didn't live as good as, somebody working at, making 20, 30 grand a year does today. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you can't tell me that you're broke. You can't tell me that you're hurting, because things have never been so good. Right. Right. Like this country, broke doesn't exist. Like, unless you've got a mental issue and you actually have a mental disability and you're like actually ill and you're homeless because of that. But like even being homeless, like you're choosing to be there, or you have a mental illness. There's a lot of programs out there. There's lots I struggle with seeing homeless people at all, because in this country, there's just so many programs that you don't have to be there. Plus there's work, right? Like
the biggest labor shortage in history in Canada.
Man, like I got a plumbing and construction company, and these guys on the side of the road begging for change, like living under a bridge somewhere, like they haven't applied, right? Like we need laborers. So I don't buy into like, I guess that kind of concept. Like I think anybody in this country can live a wealthy life by like human standards for like history. Or is everyone gonna live like the Instagram life of like everything's perfect and it's all roses? Well, no, that's all fake anyways, right? Like so but being able to like eat good food, enjoy good entertainment, like travel, like take it one or two trips a year, like all those things are so easily attainable, right? In this country, like it's.
So, on this podcast, we talk a lot about mindset, and you just shed a light on your mindset. I mean, everything that you just talked about is based on the mindset you've developed over the last few decades, right? I do strongly believe, though, personally, that your childhood plays a large role in I guess how you think or how you perceive or retain information around mistakes that you've made and just how you learn from failures, I guess you could say. Talk to me about your childhood. Like, what was that like? Was your relationship with your parents strong? Did they teach you a lot? Did your dad teach you a lot?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that's the nurture element, right? So we touched on nature. That's what it takes to be able to run the 100-meter dash with Usain Bolt. Yeah. You need it. And then the nurture element. How was Usain Bolt raised, right? So like now there's like a secondary element to the story, I guess. But like for me, I was raised with incredible parents that like, and I think that's a big reason why I'm not afraid to fail, is because like we're a middle class family. My dad was in the military, and then my mom did different jobs like wherever we worked. Where my dad was shipped out in the military. Like I was born in Germany and kind of bounced all around. Never lived anywhere more than 5 years. So like you had to adapt, right? So I've always been adaptive. Learn to adapt. Got to make new friends. Move into another town. Like those kinds of things. But always jumped into sports right away. You know, enjoyed that. Everything was a competition in my house. Didn't matter what it was. And my dad didn't let us win often, you know, and he would cheat to beat us. So like, we'd have like foot races.
Typical dad thing.
Yeah, I know. So I look back on my dad, like everything was a foot race. Everything was a competition. And he was just always trying to like find a way to make it competitive. So obviously that's like another nurture element. Like I was raised by a guy who was competitive and everything was a competition. I had an older brother, so, you know, I had to try and keep up with him. So it's like when you kind of like piece all these pieces together and you look at your personality, it makes sense. So there is like definitely a nurture element. So
what about your mother?
My mom, like very like super loving, super caring, always wanted a hug, always supportive. Like, and that I touched on that briefly there, that like, I think that's a big reason why I am not really afraid of failure, is because like, I feel like I recognize early, like what was important. Right? So you go and try hard in sport. Like I'd be devastated when we would lose a hockey game or a football game or whatever. And then like my parents were proud. Right. And they would be like, oh, but you had a huge hit. And they would bring up the positive of it. Right. And so I was like, yeah, you know what? We lost. It wasn't a great game, but I really did crush that guy. Yeah. You know, and then like you felt good about like that for like there was a positive element.
There's a proud element that you're given.
Yeah. I think my parents were always super positive that way, where there was always like something positive to come from things. And so I've always tried to do that through my life as well, is, you know, like everything can be better. So you have to be able to like be hard on yourself and say, how can I be better? But it can't be like at the cost of being miserable. Right. So you got to take joy in the little successes, and then, but like also like, man, you gotta work hard and strive for more.
Was there like a pivotal moment for you that, I mean, we talked about the nurture element. It seems like you grew up with a lot of that. Was there, you know, a pivotal moment that maybe you realized this mindset what you're talking about right now? Because I think a lot of people realize mindset's the number one thing. I mean, you need a strong mind in order to win at anything you want to do, like having a purpose and constantly chasing that, but they're struggling on how to find it, or, you know, they need situations put into their life that influences it. Was there anything like that for you, or was it more of like a build up? Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that, and if there's a story that comes to mind?
Yeah, like I think so. One thing for sure, like my work ethic is like something that like came from like especially my dad. So like there was one thing, like there's a couple things that happened in my life.
Go into it, yeah.
So one in particular, like my dad, I remember like the transmission had like blown up on our car. So my dad took it upon himself to replace it. So we're literally in our garage. He's got like all like makeshift like system, like probably all the worst tools you've ever seen. And he manages to pull the transmission out, put it all back together. And like I'm there helping him. So I would have probably been like, I don't know, maybe like couldn't have been older than 12 years old. I'm handing him tools and whatever, and he's under the car. And then so he gets it all back together, everything, and it's about, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, and I got school the next day. So I'm exhausted just from sitting there passing him tools. So he gets it all together, goes to like fire it up, doesn't work. You just realize that there's a part like on the floor they didn't put in. So it's like, oh shit, like got to take it all apart.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I got to go to bed. Like I'm tired. So my dad's like, yeah, you go to bed. So I went to bed. My dad stayed up like all night working on it. I wake up, go to school, get ready, have some cereal, whatever. I come out, my dad's walking in from the garage, like dirty, just got it all back together as I'm like leaving to go to school, goes, showers, changes, gets in the car, drives us to school, goes to work.
Wow. And that sticks with you.
Yeah, because like it had to be done, right? My dad could have easily just said, you know, what the hell with it. I'm going to bed. I'll do it tomorrow. The kids will miss school. I'll miss work. But it wasn't an option, right? And so that mindset stuck with me where like I was like blown away as a kid. And then when I reflect on it, it's like, you know, it sticks with you. Like that's doing the right thing for your family, for your job, for, you know, a lot of people would easily make a very different decision, right?
Yeah.
And then I would have learned a different lesson.
So for you, when you look back on something like that, I guess, how much appreciation do you have towards your parents for teaching you that kind of stuff? And was it, you know, I see a different perspective from you because I'm younger. I'm 19, right? So I went through the whole high school phase and all that kind of stuff more recently than you did. But I say you learn and you respect your parents and the decisions that they made, whether they were positive or negative, more as you get older. Is this something that you realized when you were 12 years old, you know, like what your dad did?
And we never had a conversation about it, not once, not even to this day, never talked about it. But like he, and I like, you don't think much of anything when you're a kid, right? Like you just assume that that's the way that it's meant to be or whatever. And then like you reflect back on things in your past afterwards and like, holy shit, like that was crazy, right?
It was a pivotal moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And then then the other thing that happened when I was a kid was I started to like outgrow my parents for things that I wanted, right? So I wanted more and more expensive things. Like so everybody's got, you know, you go to school and the kid's got the nice shoes or the nice bike or like this thing, that thing, better hockey skates, better hockey stick. Like, and then like eventually your parents are like, man, like we can't buy all those things, right? And so I know like I started to have like issues with my parents where like I was like, man, like I want this thing. And then they're, you know, so then it kind of came to a head when my friends had dirt bikes, right? So I was like, all right, I want a dirt bike. This is awesome. I went to my buddy's house. He has a dirt bike. I knew which one it was. Of course, it was brand new. So I come home to my parents. I'm like, I want a dirt bike. And my dad's like, okay, well, sounds cool. He never had a dirt bike, had no clue. So we go to the Honda dealership. And like at that time, the dirt bikes were like $4,000, right? And my dad looks at it and is like, what the hell, $4,000? Like there's no chance. Right? I'm like, that's the one. Like, I want that one. I don't know what $4,000 is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No clue. And my dad was like upset. And I think that like partially as a parent, knowing now when I have kids, like you want them to have everything. Right. And so like I remember like I was like, man, Dad, like that's the one, I want it. And he's like, you can't have it. Like it's too much money. I don't have the money. Like it's like, if you really want it that bad, get a job. Like he was like pissed. And he was, and I'm like, what do you mean get a job? He's like, here, I'll tell you what. Earn half the money for this and I'll put in the other half. So I was like, oh, okay. So then like right away I go to like, I'm like, all right, well, how am I going to make money? I'm probably this was around like 12, 13 years old. I'd never really done anything. I got to think what grade I was in, like grade,
I think you would have been like grade 8.
Yeah. So I was in grade 6.
Grade 6.
So whatever age grade 6 is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, how can I make money? And so someone told me that I could cut grass, right? So I went and knocked on my neighbor's door, took my dad's lawnmower, his gas. So basically he put all the money up for my new venture. Yep. So I go out there and I ask if I can cut the lawn. Guy thinks it's hilarious. So he's like, yeah, of course. Like, so I was like $5. So probably spent more than that on gas.
Yeah.
So I cut the guy's lawn. I'm knocking on every door. Like I'm everywhere cutting everyone's grass now. And I'm like, man, like I'm not earning money nearly as fast as I need to. Right. So I'd cut 10 lawns in a day, make $50. I'm like, I am miles away from $2,000. Like I got to speed this up, you know? So I did the easy thing. I started knocking on people's doors twice a day, but obviously grass isn't growing that fast. So then I started running out of grass to cut. And then I started like trying to sell my things. Right. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to have a yard sale. So I literally take all my stuff that my parents bought for me and I'm doing like a yard sale. right? So like, again, like my parents are literally paying for everything, and I'm not
that inner entrepreneur starting to come
yeah,
out.
so I'm like trying to figure this out. Like, how am I gonna do this, right? So I just wasn't making $2,000 fast enough. And I wanted this bike like yesterday. So I went to the Honda dealership, and so I go to the guy. I'm like, hey, like, well, what, like, can you take the price down at all? Like, can you come down? So I'm negotiating, because I'm like, I can't get there fast enough.
Right.
I got to get the number down. Like, I got to make up the gap somehow. So then the guy was like, no, man, like, this is the price. Like, so then he's like, just look in here. So he gave me like at the time, I can't, like, what the Auto Trader is, like one of those buy and sell magazines. So I don't even remember what the name of the magazine was back then, but it was like the Trader magazine, Trader Joe's or something like that. So I never knew you could buy used things. So I was like, whoa, wait a sec. Like, I can buy a used dirt bike? So the guy was like, yeah, they're like less than half the price. So I was like, oh man, this is amazing. So I'm going through trying to find like the dirt bike that matches my criteria. And now I'm doing research, because now I'm trying to figure, okay, so my buddy's got a Honda, but there's a Yamaha in here for $500 less. What's the difference between a Honda and a Yamaha? So like, I'm in grade 6, like doing like 10 times the effort for this bike than I've ever done in school. Right. So like, then I find a guy who's close to my place, ride my pedal bike, go there, and talking to him, I had like $250 saved at this point, not even close to the $2,000 I needed. And he had a dirt bike for $800. So I said to him, I'll give you 500. So then he was like, oh, 500, but you're not even close. Like, I want 800. I might go down like to like 750, but there's no way. I'm not going to 500. So I told him the story. So then he sympathized with me.
Really?
Right. So then I realized okay, human emotion plays a role in negotiating. And I remember this from like that day, that I was like, oh man, it's like the puppy dog eyes. Like, you can negotiate with people by building a rapport, telling a personal story, and then having sympathy. Right. And that worked for a long time. As soon as you get like past a certain age where you're not cute anymore,
that doesn't work.
It's a struggle.
I think I'm past that age, but yeah.
But like, so then I got him down to $500. So I go home, I get my dad. I'm like, hey, I got to show you something. So I bring him over there, and again, I'm still like pretty naive kid. I just assume my dad's got money in his pocket. So I go like, okay, so I want this bike. And my dad's like, okay, well, great. Same deal. You get half, I'll pay the other half. So I pulled out $250, and I was like, all right, like, you pay. And he was like,
where'd that come from?
What the hell? Where'd you get $250? Right. So, and then from that day forward, everything was 50-50 with me and my dad. That was a deal that he stuck to right up until I was done high school. And like, when I turned 16, my first car was a 77 Corvette. And I just I flipped that bike up to, dune buggies, other dirt bikes, 4-wheelers, and the price just kept going up on stuff. I'd save some money, get something bigger and better, save some money, get something bigger and better. And then I bought an old Corvette, and then me and my dad basically redid it completely when I was 15. Yeah. So I got my license. First car was a 77 Corvette.
I think the biggest thing in that story to pull out is the persistence aspect. The movie The Founder, the McDonald's movie, talks about persistence is the number one thing that you need as an entrepreneur in order to keep going and to actually be successful. Mm-hmm. Showing that persistence just in the getting the dirt bike incident, you've seen that play out through all your entire life, but you reference back to that one moment. Mm-hmm. I think it shows how pivotal that moment is in your entire career. Yeah. I guess you could say.
And I'll do the exact same thing with our kids. It'll be the exact same learning.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. So now you have children of your own. How your parents taught you and what they did. Clearly, they did something right. Mm-hmm. What are some things that you learned specifically from that in order to teach your children? Because if we get parents listening to this, I think that's valuable insight.
Yeah, it's tough. So with our daughter, like our number one thing, she's 6 now. So she's starting to be competitive in gymnastics and other things in life. So like the number one thing is effort, right? To try your hardest all the time in everything. And that we'll always be proud of her if she tries her hardest. But like if you quit, like we've got a problem with that. And so she's starting to learn the difference and stuff like that. It takes time. We're pretty early, like I think in like that development stage, but she's really starting to get it now, like turning a corner, like there's a big difference. And so she she can be proud of herself in all circumstances if she puts 100% effort in. But the times when you should be like looking inward and not feeling great about your accomplishments are when you could have done better and you just quit or you just stopped, right? And I think that like that's how people fail. That is like, if there is a secret to failure, it's that you're willing to stop.
Interesting. So that persistence element, it's going to stay consistent with all of your kids, just in that element alone, right?
Yeah, like we'll try. Like they're their own people, and they could do who knows where they're going to end up, right? Like it's hard to say what will stick and what won't. And then also like it's all trial and error, right? Like I look back on my childhood, I'm like, oh, I think that played a role in my life. I could be wrong. Might not be the things that I remembered that, you know, and I'm not perfect. So that's the other thing is that I think there's elements of my life that I'm not too sure I want my kids to be like me entirely. Right?
So Evan, I want to, we touched on more the personal side of things, but you're a very successful businessman. You've done some big deals. You've built some really cool buildings. And I want to dissect your brain a little bit on that, just on a more general level, but when you got out of the Olympics, when you realized wrestling wasn't for you, can you take me through that decision process and getting into real estate? Because that's really where your bread and butter is right now.
Yeah, I think so. One of the things is a lot of like professional athletes go through like this depression stage when they're done. So like to wake up every single morning, it's like, okay, I'm going to kill myself to be the best in the world at this thing. And then like when you get to that point where you're hovering with the decision to like not do it, it's because there's something else that's tugging at you, right? And for me, it was like, I can't be broke like this anymore, right? Because something happened, like the blinders to being broke, where it was like, you have one goal in mind and nothing mattered, they were gone. And it was like, man, like I want a better life, right? And then, so I started investing in real estate because we traveled a lot with wrestling. Like we were in Europe for, you know, who knows how long, and then back, and then in Russia, and then back, and then in the US, and then back, and then traveling all over Canada so like it was just so hard to like be focused, right? So that's how we ended up getting like really into flipping real estate and stuff like that. So, and even that, like we took, I tried for like 4 years straight to buy a house. I'd find a good deal, go try and buy it, didn't get approved, go like try and like increase my credit a little bit, go and try again, didn't get approved. And then finally, after like 4 attempts over the course of 2 years, some bank made the mistake of giving me a mortgage like when I clearly didn't deserve it, right? I'm making $19,000 a year as a national team athlete.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even pay my rent, let alone the bills on a house. So we finally bought one house, and then and right off the bat, like we bought the crappiest house on a street, probably the crappiest house in all of St. Catharines, and then, you know, did little renos. And so we did all the work ourselves and always tried to do these little things like putting in gyms and saunas and hot tubs and just make these cool little features that made it different and better, just cleaned it up, spruced it up, and then either sold it or refinanced it. Turned most houses we bought into duplexes or triplexes and just filled it with people from the wrestling team.
And that's kind of where that opportunity opened up for you. That transition from...
and so now I had another passion, right? And all athletics, like there's a season for everything in life. And I think this is probably one of my best like gifts of life, was the absolute like heart-wrenching, like horrible feeling of having wrestling taken away. So I had a couple like major surgeries. I had to have some vertebrae fused in my neck, and like I was just like done. My body was done. I was worn out.
Where real quick, I don't want to skip over that because life transitions like that are not easy.
Yeah.
Where did you go mentally in that, I guess you could say, depressive state of lack? Is it for maybe better words, but lack of purpose? Or seeking purpose?
Like so it's funny because the day that I quit, like I was like done. Like I was like, okay, I'm done. So I was at the national championships. So you got to make weight, and I was losing 15, 20 pounds to make weight. So there's the national championships leading into the next Olympic qualifier. Like I was the favorite to win. I was the national champion the year before, and so I was like prepping to go weigh in. So you weigh in the day before. Back then you weighed in the day before. Now you weigh in the day of. But so I went and stood in line at the weigh-ins and looked around and like realized that like I just didn't want it anymore.
Yeah.
I just looked at everybody standing in line and, just I had different dreams and goals and aspirations at that point. We'd already flipped some houses. We already started on like the path of like wanting a better life. And I just stood there. I watched everybody weigh in and I just left. And I was just like, I'm done. And I trained hard right up to that point. And just something clicked in me where I was like, done. The passion isn't there. Like I don't want it anymore. Yeah. So that's how I ended it. And it was like I'm gonna switch gears and I'm going all in on business. And it's tough too because like at that point, like I would have been like 35, I guess, right? So at 35, I'd already taken like a big chunk of working years and sacrificed them. Like I was still working for but my focus was competing in wrestling. And so like now it's at 35. It's like, okay, I got time. I got some lost time. I got to make up for this. Right. But the interesting thing is that like every morning for, 20 years straight, like I wake up, work out. Right. And, I woke up the next day because that was my routine. Alarm went off, get up, go down to the gym. So I've had a gym in our house forever. That's basically number one. We do the gym before we do the kitchen. So
really?
It's like, it's like the most important thing in every house.
So routine still plays a big role in I guess, everything that you do.
Yep. And so I walked downstairs. It's the day after I decided I wasn't wrestling anymore. Turned on the treadmill, getting going. Like couldn't even do it. Like, oh man, I can't bring myself to run. And then I, bench press. That's an easy one. We'll do a chest workout. Everybody likes that. So I'll lay down, load up some weights. It felt like it was like I couldn't even lift like the bar. Yeah. Like mentally, like I couldn't do it. So like I went like almost 2 years without really working out because
it was 2 years.
Yeah. Like I would work out for a bit and stop, work out for a bit and stop, go to the gym one day, not go for like 3 days. And then like, it just, I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't bring myself to do it because it was like, what is the purpose? Like every single day I woke up and I did cardio because I wanted to be in better shape than everyone in the world. And then I lifted weights and I killed myself doing it because I wanted to be the strongest in the world. Right. And then I went to practice and I worked harder and longer than everybody because I wanted to be better than all of them. Right. And then like, as soon as you don't have that purpose, I was like, man, what, like, I can't even do it. I can't lift weights. I can't do cardio. There's no purpose now. And, I started to get a little bit out of shape and then I came up with a purpose again, which was basically to be healthy and not look horrible in a bathing suit. But like, that's basically what it is. And like, I like working out and I like that aspect of it, but like, it's just funny because it took me a really long time to be able to train physically again. Right.
It's that transition state that clearly made that for you. Did you take that time to find a new purpose? Like, I guess, I don't know. And what does a new purpose even look like? Is it writing it down? Like, this is my new purpose. This is what I'm going to chase. Like, I want to be worth $10 million. Or like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I don't know. That's tough. Like, I never put like a dollar amount on anything. Like, I'm definitely chasing freedom, and the goals always evolve, right? So, I haven't set ever like a lofty like end goal, but I
financially
do at all.
Oh, interesting.
Like we were doing like primarily student rentals, right? And then that market got flooded and it got like really hard to buy anything and make money. And there was way too many. And then Brock was putting up all these big buildings for students. So I just pivoted. I was like, okay, like the student rentals is done. So then I just started converting single family homes into duplexes and triplexes and renting them to families only. Right. And I did them a little bit nicer. Granite countertops, nice finishes, stainless steel appliances, a little bit nicer than what other rentals were. And then I'd rent them for more. Right. So we were getting higher rent than anybody else was getting and way more stable tenants. That market started to increase. The cost of like single family homes started going up. Cash flow became a little bit more difficult. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to switch gears, like looking around at other investments. Where can I make money? I need to go bigger. So we started buying like old apartment buildings that were really run down. Buy an old building, completely gut every single unit, do the same thing we did with single family homes, but the little apartment buildings. Then started looking at industrial land. Industrial started looking really good. Bought a couple old buildings, cut them up into units, and then instead of like, we bought an old window factory, right? They made aluminum windows, Duotemp. Most people who are from Thorold, St. Catharines know what Duotemp is, but they made aluminum windows and doors. Obviously, that business went out when the vinyl window came to town. So they closed the factory. We bought it. Nobody really wanted those factories. Cut it up into a bunch of little shops, put a gym in one spot, put our office in the other, and it makes sense. So we started doing stuff like that. Like, our business has constantly evolved wherever like the math makes sense.
Right.
So like, if I see something, it's always real estate related. I just think there's huge value in owning assets, the cash flow, obviously. But the goal at the end of the day for me is to get into this position where, you don't necessarily have to work every day to live your life. Right. And freedom is an absolute must for me to be able to, like, my dream is to just jump on a plane somewhere and just be gone. Right.
Does that dream include working?
Honestly, I don't think I've ever really worked. Right. Like, it's, I have, like, when I stopped wrestling, I was working 16 to 18 hours a day, every day.
Just trying to make it by.
It wasn't that. Like, I had to fill my time. Right. Like, and the amount of effort that I had to, like, release in wrestling, like, the equivalent to that in working hours was 18 hours a day. Right. And I also recognized really early, like, I'm very mathematical. So everything that we do, all of our investments, it's always the numbers. Like, I don't make very many emotional decisions. I just do the math on everything. I do the math on like, it's ridiculous. Right. Like, every time, like, anybody ever says anything, I'm pulling stats on it. Because it's like, okay, what percentage of this happens? What percentage of people do this? What percentage of, like, and I'm constantly, like, curious.
Educating.
And not as educating to an extent, but, like, I'm always curious on, like, plausibility. Right. And so, like, it's one thing that if like, things are possible, but plausible, and also what are the chances of it? And so, like, as long as you can place yourself within, like, a range of plausibility and possibility, like, I think that it's worth the risk, because I'll probably outwork you. And that's kind of the way my mindset works.
Right. So, okay. So talk to me a little bit about, we touched on work ethic. We touched on the risk element to the business side of things that you're doing. Jumbling that all together, putting it together, would you say that you're constantly chasing for more knowledge just around all of those avenues? Like, are you constantly chasing for more risk? Are you constantly chasing for more education and more mistakes? And because those are the things that brought you to where you are today.
Yeah.
But now Evan is okay. Evan's got freedom. Evan, you can fly to Italy if you wanted to, right? For 2 weeks and come back. Like, where are you at now with that?
Well, so life changes. So then circumstance is going to play a role, of course. Like, so, like, when I was just finished wrestling, 18 hours a day working made sense, because I knew that my competition wasn't doing it. Right. And I know that the average person was only working 6 to 8 hours a day, and probably only really efficient for 3 of them. Right. And so I really pride myself on always doing something, always moving something, always, like, progressing. So I take very few breaks. I would, like, I only eat my lunch when I'm driving, things like that. Like, so that I'm multitasking in a sense that, like, I'm always trying to find a way to double dip on time. And by doing that, like, where the average person working in the field that I was working in I was able to make big leaps, and I was able to just pass guys, like, really surpass guys quite easily, just by sleeping very little and working longer, more efficient hours than most. Right. And so, like, that was, like, the thing is I actually have never really been all that good at anything. Right. Like, I'm short. I don't have, like, great athletic ability. Like, every sport that I've ever done, I've been average at, you know what I mean? Like, I've never been the worst, but I'm absolutely never the best. Yeah. And then once I, like, get a chance to learn a couple things, outwork the competition, then I'm competitive. Right. And so that's the way that's the way it is in business. That's the way, like, if I was, like, a little bit smarter, I'd probably be a billionaire, but, like, I'm not. You know what I mean? Super average guy who just outworks people. Like, that's what I do. Like, put me in a room with 100 people and I'll put money on it that I'll outlast you.
Yeah.
Like that's all I got.
It's interesting that you relate that back to the passion. Everything that happened, I mean, even just with your parents, right? With your dad, that situation about the dirt bike and watching him, repair the car and the transmission, you gain a little bit more understanding of how much it really takes if you want to accomplish something. I want to come a little bit into the development space. Not necessarily like, oh, what kind of finishes do you do to get the highest rent? I want to ask you more specifically the mental, I guess, the roadblocks you have to face and have to overcome, and what you do mentally to overcome those when you're developing said properties. You have a beautiful property on the water, Niagara Lake. You're developing a very large condo unit. You've owned a lot of land, and I'm sure you still do. Investment properties all around. What roadblocks do you have to overcome mentally to make sure that those things get done and those things happen, and you are successful at it?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't really like. There's just so many things that kind of like come as they come, right? So you like with like building houses on the water. We've done a bunch of projects on the water, whether it's renovations or new construction. I love the water, so like it's just one of those things where watching the water is like watching a fire, where it's like this natural like therapist. I've just always loved the water for so many reasons. So we focus on that with our like luxury end of things. So you wouldn't know it right off. Like you say, okay, well, I want to build a house here. I think it's got a cool view. We could do something awesome. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you run into issues with, the NPCA and then the city and then shoreline protection. And so like there's all these issues and you just kind of learn as you go. I think that like, then there's, how do you fund it? How do you carry it? How do you, find a way to get all these materials, get all these guys to show up and work in unison and be efficient? Like on the building side, like it's very difficult to like put all that together with the elements, and of course we've got seasons here too, like our weather's all over the place. So I think that I'm just so used to it. It's been like doing this for over 20 years. It's just, you make a decision to do something and obstacles will rise up in front of you and you find a way to overcome them. Like you're the problem solver. That's basically it. Yeah. Like it's just all that. And I've done such different things for the last 20 years. Like I look back on it, the bulk of it is real estate, a handful of different businesses, but like if I sat down and made a list of all of the unique issues that we've come up against and how we solve them, like there's plenty of times where it could have just quit. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like it was never an option. That willingness to quit is what destroys you, I guess, as an entrepreneur or as a person, right? Yeah, like and all of the most successful people in the world are problem solvers. Like the most successful people in the world are the best problem solvers. There's also like an element of just having great ideas and just being innovative and stuff like that. Like geniuses, like Elon Musk is a genius. Like it's, you know what I mean? Like, and then he's a guy who's willing to like outwork the competition and he takes massive risks, right? So like, he's like he's like the Usain Bolt of business and entrepreneurship, right? He's got like every element. He's got a brain that you got to be born with to an extent. He's got the work ethic that like circumstance can only create. And he's got the heart and the desire and like the hunger that surely needed some very like key things to happen in his life to build it. Right. So it's the perfect storm. So, okay. So you brought up problem solving and you say all the successful people are problem solvers. What do you find that they have that other people don't to be the best problem solver? Or I guess, is it just a mindset, or is it something that, you have to educate yourself, read a couple books on how to be a better problem solver? Like, what does a problem solver look like? How do you become a good problem solver? I don't know. It's interesting because like sometimes I'm trying to solve problems that aren't there. You know what I mean? Like they get to the point that it's like to my detriment sometimes. Like right. Where like just the way that it was done before is the way it should be done. Just do that. It's easy, right? But then it's like, well, is there a way to do it a little bit more efficient? Is there a way to do it a little bit faster? Is there a way to do it where I can save a couple bucks? Is there a way to do it that like, there's always like, I'm always like looking at everything about like, is there another way, right? And I think it's partially because I've run into so many problems where like a lot of times it's like like money is a big problem, right? So it's like we've got over $100 million worth of projects going on right now. Like, I go, I'll show you my bank account. I don't have $100 million in there.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a problem. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you got to carry it. You got to find a way to get to like each individual like stepping stone within any of these one projects and just find a way to make it work. Yeah. And you got to be creative and you got to be working your ass off to get there, and you just can't quit because it is so easy to quit. Like quitting is the easiest for sure. But
it's clear that you chase that non-quitting mindset. So, okay. So, Evan, we always have a question that we ask every single guest after they come on. And the one question I have for you is, without knowing our next guest, what question do you have for them? Just based on the things that we talked about today.
It's interesting.
It's a tough, you can't just pull it out, eh? I don't blame you. It's not easy.
Do people usually take a long time to answer this one?
Yeah, typically.
What would I ask the next guest? I don't know.
I know we touched on risk. We touched on mindset. We touched on personality. One of the interesting things that we touched on, and the reason I do this because I feel it does a good job at summing up what we talked about, because it leaves the audience with a question as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that we always have to be asking questions and challenging our opinions.
I would say, what's your dream and why haven't you achieved it?
What's your dream and why haven't you achieved it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Evan, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's an unconventional podcast, the ones that you normally do, like wine and stuff, but maybe we'll have wine on the next one.
Yeah, I know. You got to have a drink.
I know, right? I appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you? I know, like, Jesse, his amazing wife, is a fantastic real estate agent in the area, and she sells some of the highest luxury properties in the area. How can people reach out to you guys and work with you guys?
I think we're pretty easy to find. Like our last name's MacDonald, so Mac Inc., macinc.ca. Jesse and Evan MacDonald, pretty easy to find just about anywhere online if you search that, I think. And our numbers and emails and everything's out there.
I love it. Yeah. Love it. Evan, man, thank you so much. Guys, I hope you learned a thing or two. And if you ever want to reach out, make sure to leave a comment down below about questions that you want us to ask other golden guests like Evan MacDonald here. And if you have any questions on anything pertaining to business, we'd be happy to answer them. Let us know in the comments down below. But stay tuned for the next episode. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.